Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 454th New Social Environment. I'm Cal, the curatorial assistant here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and the privilege of being your MC today for a conversation between Arthur Sims and Phong H. Bui on the occasion of Arthur's show at Martos Gallery. And I say, brother, had a very good day. Extended now through January 15th. And we're thrilled to have the poet Chekwube Dunladi here, who will read to close today's program. A few quick notes before we get started. The Rail acknowledges that Black Lives Matter and that here in New York, we are on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded lands and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. We encourage you to check out the chat for a living document of resources and actions. Over the past 21 years, the Brooklyn Rail has undertaken a miraculous journey, bringing together in a single monthly publication art, music, dance, film, theater, and literature, along with thoughtful social and political meditations. As a small nonprofit, we need your support. With 11 days left this December, we are fundraising $150,000. Your contribution will directly support our writers, guest artists, production staff, and operations at the Rail for the coming year. Please check the chat for more information and links to donate. And now to introduce today's guest and host. A native of Kingston, Jamaica, Arthur Sims lives and works in Staten Island, New York. His work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, including representing the country of Jamaica at the 49th Venice Biennial in 2001. Numerous awards include the Rome Prize and Guggenheim Fellowship. And artist, writer, and independent curator Phong H. Bui is the publisher and artistic director of the Brooklyn Rail, the River Rail, Rail Editions, and Rail Curatorial projects. Phong, take it away.
Thank you so much, Carl. I love the title. And I say, brother, had a very good day. One hello. Make it two hello if it's possible. And the rest of the days of this week and the rest of the year should be good day too. So as I've been reading, our amazing guest critic pages in the winter issue, which been out now for 2 weeks, the critic pages, as you probably have some of you read, were brilliantly put together by our friend, the legendary editor of Critical Inquiry, Tom Mitchell, also known as W.J.T. Mitchell, on the theme of idolatry and iconoclasm under the heading Sounding Idols. Yes, in reading it, I felt it's so prescient, it's so timely in regarding where we are today at this moment in time, namely losing the essential strength that normally stand in the middle, holding the left and the right in check and balance. Metaphorically speaking, I mean, by a tiny strand of hair. Why the left is in this sense associated, if we may, with iconoclasm, the right idolatry. They are the evil twins, as Tom and company explore deeply into how both conditions need each other. I should point out that while I think about Tom's discovery of William Blake when he came over for lunch, his Blake book of Urizen, in 68, he told us, in the height of Vietnam War, during the Tet Offensive, just a year actually before Stanley Fish's publication of his study of Milton, Surprised by Sin, the reader of In Paradise Lost, which in a sense, combining Miltonic sublimity with Shakespearean relativism in regarding to question of ethics and epistemology. Milton, as we know, is an epic poem by Blake, written and illustrated by him from 1804 to 1810. Yes, the subject is John Milton himself, who returned from heaven and unites with Blake to explore the relationship between living writers and their predecessors, and to undertake a mystical journey to amend his own previous spiritual failures. Indeed, I have no idea where I'm going with this, Carl, but I've been reading Stanley Fish's book, Say the Word on Your Own Time, in which he argues that however laudable these various goals to save the world might be, there is one but proper role for the academe in society to advance body of knowledge and to equip students or doing the same, you know? Fish insists that teacher's role is to present materials of inquiry to students along with various options of methodology, analysis, and so on and so forth, not to practice politics, but to study it, not to advocate for or against religious doctrines, but to describe them, and so on and so forth. I like to take this moment here to point out that with the current rhetoric against immigrants, I can't imagine who would do all the handiwork in this country, let alone becoming more invested in getting opportunity to contribute culturally to the well-being of this country. In other words, most, if not all immigrants are either coming to this country in order to escape the tyranny of their respective country with dictators or in search for better opportunities, especially for their children. They do not come here to exploit the wealth of this nation, but rather to work hard to earn their newfound freedom while creating a new life. Arthur Sims and I are old friends. We know each other since 1986 when I first came to New York. And Arthur's mother worked as a full-time au pair. My work as a cleaning person, cleaning churches and synagogue in the suburb. We both work off job. Arthur worked as an art handler for years and years at MoMA. I remember seeing him even at Guggenheim to pay his rent for years and years. I work as a house painter to pay my rent for years and years. We both feel living in our lives as artists is at its core a personal journey that does not thrive upon the idea of expecting successes, you know, especially with the terrible pressure as to when it would come. Might come or might not.
That's right.
However, Arthur is having his breakout show right now at Martos Gallery. At the moment, the show is so successful, so brilliant that is now extended. I think initially it was supposed to be December 23rd, the day before Christmas, but now it's extended till Saturday, January 15, 2022.
That's right, yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
So anyway, Arthur has grown as an artist. He has grown as an artist. He hasn't changed one bit. In his character. Isn't that terrific to have friends like Arthur so we can talk with great ease anytime, including now? So let's begin. Welcome, Arthur.
Thank you, Phong. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Well said, my friend. I mean, what you spoke of is about history. We have to learn from history, right? To articulate the steps that we take going forward. We don't always do that, but it's there to be had. And, you know, being a teacher, it's very important. You know, you said the word teacher, several times. It's very important for us to pass this along to our students, right? It's an honor for me to be a teacher. I reflect on all the great teachers that I've had in the past, right? And what they meant to me, what they mean to me. I also reflect on all the bad teachers that I had, and I definitely don't want to be them, right? So it's important that we articulate the history, right? The lives lived, right? The cultures, right, that came before us. And I believe I try to do that with my artwork. You know, some of the iconic pieces, you know, in the first slide, First Landing Jump by Robert Rauschenberg.
Why don't we do that? Kyle, can you just share the first one right away?
Yeah, you can put that up.
Oh,
I remember as a student, I saw that, right, in the 1980s at MoMA. I mean, MoMA is very important in terms of my artistic knowledge, training, so on and so forth. Plus, I actually worked there at a part of my life when I was a kid, right? So I remember first coming upon this piece as a college student, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, is that art? Is it considered art? And what is it trying to say, right? I mean, it's plugged into the wall, so it's electrified and there's a light that's on all the time. So it was very profound for me, right? It posed the question, what is art, right? And that's one question that I'm always asking myself and asking my students, what is art? Can art be a statement? Can art be someone leaving a note in a gallery saying, go to the corner of Fifth Avenue and 30th Street and jump up in the middle and do a cartwheel in the middle of the, in the middle of the street, right? And the answer is yes, anything and everything can be art, right? So this was really profound for me seeing this. Another thing about this piece is that it was made in 1961, right? I was made in 1961, that's right. So, I mean, it tied a lot of things together for me, right? So I always reflect on this piece, always reflect on Rauschenberg, you know, like I said, you know, history before you, you know, you're building on this culture, you're building on this lineage. And this is one important piece that's influenced the making of my sculptures. And I guess I can actually say my drawings too, because it's on the wall. You know, it's a sculpture and it's a painting, it's a combine. Rauschenberg invented a new term, combine, you know, something that fuses both practices. And, you know, I like to say my work is a combine with a lot of times drawing and sculpture, right? You know, even some of my sculptures that are physically sitting in the center of the room, they're almost like drawings, you know, because a lot of them, they have rope in them or they have wire. So it's almost like I'm, you know, drawing, metaphorically drawing with the rope or the wire. And, you know, oftentimes people ask me, why rope, why wire? I guess you can go to the next slide, which should be Jackie Winger's Found Square, right? So this is another piece that I saw as a student at MoMA, right? New York is a great resource, right, of information, right? And in New York, there are all these great institutions like MoMA, the Met, Brooklyn Museum, so on and so forth. So I always tell my students, right, you know, you have the information here to go and see all these iconic images, all these iconic artists. So take full advantage of it. Of course, now, because we're in a pandemic, it's a little compromised, but, you know, there's nothing like actually seeing the physical art, breathing in the same room as the physical art, right? So when I first started doing all my sculptures in the late 1980s, I was getting all these various elements, things that I'll find, things that people give me, put it together to create the work, you know, the work of art, the sculpture sitting in the middle of the floor. But something was always missing, right? I tried painting, you know, the sculptural, the desperate elements, painting them to see if that gives it a uniformity, and it didn't. But then going to see this work, Bound Square, by Jackie Windsor, the post-minimalist Canadian artist, great artist. It's a square, right? 4 logs and the rope tied on each corner, right? So seeing this piece, it gave me the idea to start using rope in the late 80s, early 90s, right? And another cultural reference for the rope is that the rope that I started using was hemp, right? I'm Jamaican, Phong, right? When you think of hemp, what do you think of, right? I mean, good or bad, you think of ganja, right? So it had, you know, it had that cultural reference to me. So that became the skin of various works of art, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah, you go to slide 4, Lucy Fradkin meets John DeLapa or Gregor, right? See that? Yeah. So this is one of my earliest pieces that I started in 1989. You can see it's actually it started as a painting. You could see the canvas, you can see the rope tying into the canvas and the kind of pinkish color. If you were standing in front of this piece, you'd be able to see somewhat inside and see all these various elements that are on the surface of the piece that are painted, right? So this is one of the pieces where I tried using paint, but it didn't work, right? The paint didn't satisfy. It didn't give me that aggressive texture that I needed. That's when, you know, I went to the rope and, you know, thusly this piece, right? 1989 to 1992, right? And it stands almost 9 feet tall, leans against the wall, right? And it's Gregor. It's Gregor Samsa from the Metamorphosis.
What? I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, you know, I had a show. You were there at the show that I had in 1992, my first one-person show at that French guy, another French guy, Philippe Briette Gallery.
I remember.
558 Broadway down in Soho. And he'd come to the studio, and as I was working on the piece, he was bugging me about giving me a title for this work, right? You know, give me a title, give me a title. Oh, leave me alone, leave me alone. Okay, Lucy Fradkin meets John DeLapa. That's why I gave him the title. Lucy Fradkin, you know, my wife, you know, the painter, you know, great painter, Lucy. And John DeLapa is a very good friend of mine. So then he leaves, and I'm continuing to work on the piece. And the piece is on the floor, right? I'm working on the floor, laid out on the floor. And I use a lot of liquid, various polymers and glue to kind of give the rope a sort of sheen and bind it together. And as I'm doing it, you know, it starts to look like Gregor, right? Yeah. So, you know, it goes to the ritual of me creating a work of art. As I'm working on the piece, it kind of starts to reveal itself, yeah. Right? So that's the art kind of telling me which way to go. And in fact, this piece told me the title of it as I'm working on it. So I added Anne Gregor to this work because it was so much about that literature for me, right? Yeah. So again, it goes back, you know, what is art, right? Art can be from a statement, it could be from literature, it could be from a smell, it could be from various cultures that you visited or studied, right? Multiple things, okay? So you can go back to number 3, the Cy Twombly. Go to the Cy Twombly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also a MoMA collection.
Right. And again, I saw this as a student, and I mean, it's about gestures, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's about abstract expressionism. It's about writing. It's about graffiti, right? Graffiti comes from Pompeii, right? It's Italian, right? So again, I saw this as a student, right? What is art? This went on to influence my aesthetic, right? It went on to influence my drawing, my art making. I mean, it's a wonderful work of art, and it was on view for many years at MoMA. I don't know if it's still on view now, but for many years, whenever I went to MoMA, I had to go see the Rauschenberg, I had to go see this piece, and the Jackie Windsor, right? This piece was also born in 1961. So again, it references the year that I was born, right? Yeah. So it's an aspect, the ritual aspect, right? Mm-hmm. You know, so, which is a very important part of my work, basically. So
you also have a very profound relationship with Rauschenberg.
Yes.
They met at Black Mountain College.
So. That's right. So they have that dialogue, that language going back and forth. Yeah. Which is what great art does, right? I guess you can go to slide 6, the arc. Go to that one, the arc, right? Yeah. So in my show at Philippe Riet in 1992, you know, this piece was there. The prior piece, Lucy Fradkin meets John DeLapa. There were several pieces that are in this current show that was in that show. So that really was an important show for me. It was my introduction to the art world, or the art world's introduction to me, right? Yeah. So this was actually, it's not the first rope piece that I finished, but it's the first piece that I started on as a rope piece. Mm-hmm. And again, you could see the top part of it, not quite center. You could see that blue, that painted blue. So if you're able to go into the belly of this sculpture, you would see that blue that's painted all over. Yeah. I think I might have a picture of it on my website under studios that I've had, you know, from 1989. Yeah, and again, you know, it didn't satisfy me. You know, I look at it now, man. You know, there's a particular smell that it has, right? Because rope has a life, right? It's fiber, and it has this aggressiveness to it, right? Which is important. Right. And I think of that aggressiveness, and I think of Lee Bonteque, right? And Lee Bonteque was one of my teachers at Brooklyn College.
Yeah, you know, you and I never talked about this, but I know when I met her, she was still every week coming to teach, and she would spend the night at Bobby Aston's home. That's how I met her.
That's right. At that point, I think she was living in rural Pennsylvania, and she would come and spend several nights to come and teach. I mean, she was amazing. She was a very shy person, right? And a very loving person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she was great. And, you know, I had her as a teacher. I didn't know she was this amazing artist because she didn't talk anything about that. It was all about you, what you want to do, you know, with your work. And then one day we had this art group, and we invited Lee Bonteque and Alan D'Arcangelo, another one of my great teachers. And they showed all this work, and it just blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
Lee Bonteque, those pieces that she does, I mean, even today, you look at them, right? They just dominate the wall, right? They're really aggressive. So I think I was trying to get that feeling with this, you know, this aggressive kind of raw rope piece, right? And this is the birth of a lot of rope pieces that came after it, right? But like I said, it's not the first one that I did. The first one that I did, Phong Bu, everyone, is one of the only people to see that piece, because I had to destroy it. I had to push it out of the window because I had to leave the space where I was living in Prospect Heights. You know, I lived in this duplex on the second floor in a brownstone, and it was a nice space with high ceilings, 13-foot ceilings. At one point, the ceiling fell down, actually, and I'm lucky I wasn't standing under it, because it would have taken me out, basically, right? I wouldn't be here today if I were. And the area where the ceiling fell down is where I worked, right? So at one point, I had to leave that space because the owner given us free rent because the ceiling fell down, but then we just had to get out of there. And I made this piece called Left Foot, right? It was about 7 feet tall and maybe 8 feet wide. I made it in 1990. It was so intensely wrapped, right? It was on wheels also, that I tried to take it apart. I couldn't do it. I tried to cut it, take it, couldn't do it. It didn't fit outside the door because I made it so big. I wasn't thinking, how are you going to get it out, right? It didn't fit. So there were several big strapping young men that lived upstairs from me, you know. This was 1991 or so, I can't remember. But back then I was this big strapping young man too. So I paid them $20 each. We had windows that went from floor to ceiling, took the window out, took the frame out, and then just pushed it out the window into the backyard and then left, right? Never took a picture of that piece, right? But, you know, that piece kind of haunts me because it's, you know, I did it. It was an important piece, never took a picture of it. But at one point it did exist in this world, right? Yeah. So, so this is probably the second one that I did, right? The second rope piece. It's on wheels, right? It's on wheels for a particular reason because it probably weighs about 700 pounds, right?
Yeah.
It also poses the question, what is a base? Constantine Brancusi, right? Who's a very important artist in my development also. A lot of his works are housed at MoMA and various other museums, you know. His Bird in Flight, like if you go to slide number 7, go to slide number 7, Cal. Yeah, this is Hemp or If I Were a Bird, 1991. Hemp referring to the rope itself and the cultural aspect of Jamaica, right? Or If I Were a Bird, relating to all those bird pieces by Brancusi, Constantine Brancusi. Yeah. Right. This piece is also influenced by another work that's in the collection of MoMA by Martin Prieur, Greed's Trophy.
Oh, right? Beautiful piece. Yeah.
Greed's Trophy. Yes. I remember going back to that piece many times, just looking at it. It just sits on the wall and comes out. It's more like a wall relief. It comes out into your space, right? So that's the reference point for this piece.
Yeah. Let me pause for a second. Just a little bit, because you mentioned Martin, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, he was in the Peace Corps. Peace Corps in Sierra Leone.
Yes.
Working there, and I think it was important 2 years for Martin, you know, as it was similarly to Joe Shapiro when he was in India. But the point was that Martin, when he was there, he was able to incorporate his deep attraction to traditional techniques of weaving, pottery, making clothes, dyeing, and especially joinery and wood craftsmanship from local woodworkers, you know, the
Yes.
ebony carvers, I would
Yes.
say. So before, I think that was very important to his own development, leading to more complex issue
Right.
on his work. But it's interesting in thinking of Martin in that sense, you know. But now that you've been tying for so long, you've been tying using rope for a variety of way, Arthur. It's interesting to me because the action of the verb to tie also means ligature. Ligature is an act of binding things together, but also a compounding note in mensural notation, indicating a group of kind of musical notes to be sung to syllables. It's interesting in singing musicality of it, because I can't help but think of, for example, Bo Diddley, the great American bluesman that influenced the Beatles and the Hollies and Presley and whatnot. He named his name after the diddley bow, right? So the diddley bow is one string instrument, very simple, originated from West Africa, and it's considered to be an entry level, but yet it plays a significant role in the transference of African performance technique into America early instrumental vocabulary. I meant like rural American sound in the 30s. You know, it's like sliding piece of metal, glass, a long string instrument, because they couldn't simply mediate with the European metric when the guitar is given to the slaves, you know, working in cotton fields. So that's something that I want to wait and talk to you about further in, but still, there is a musicality, there is a sense of, if you were thinking about the early piece that you mentioned, Lucy Frackin meet John de Lapa, and then is now going to arc. So one is made, still stationary, leaning against the wall. The other one is on the dolly. Implied movement.
Yes. Movement is a very important in my work, you know, because I'm an immigrant, right? You know, we're immigrants, Phong. We came to this country, right? You know, I was 7 years old. I'm going to tell my parents, you know, plus I'm going to we're coming to reunite with my mother, right? So, I mean, you know, so when I say movement, you know, about me, it's about the, you know, the African diaspora, or just people in general, you know, leaving what they know to come to or go to wherever they go to for a better way of living, a better way of life for them and their family that comes after them, right? So I'm always thinking about that, right? That, you know, in terms of the movement, you know, some pieces, they imply movement more than actually being able to move. So I work with that also, implication of movement, as opposed to like the ark that, you know, it's 700 pounds, it's on wheels, but you could still try to push it and eventually it will move because it's on wheels, right? As opposed to a piece, the spinning knife piece, that's also in the show. Let me see what number is that one? Spinning knife. Yeah, number 13.
Number 13, yes.
Yeah, the spinning knife piece, right? Yeah, this piece, right? The spinning knife is actually on the other side, right? So that's actual movement, you know. On occasion, you know, it's not been exhibited that often, but the last few times when I did exhibit it, I didn't plug it in, right? So it's more about implied movement as opposed to when it's plugged in now, which is actual movement. So sometimes I work with that tension back and forth too. So the knife on the other side of this piece, it actually spins backwards, right? So it's spinning against the blade. So it's not necessarily supposed to cut you, but it's still in motion and it can cut you, right? So you have to be careful. And this piece is, you know, it's an important piece for me, right? Like all these pieces are, because there are all these corks that are in this mesh, right? And the corks refer back to when I was a kid in Jamaica, right? I used to make little toys, I used to make little soldiers. Again, I was picking up on something that I saw around me. It's a cultural aspect from my upbringing, right? You make do with what you have, because like I said, Jamaica, you know, it's a poor country with good spirit, right? So you make do with what you have. So It refers back to when I was a kid in Jamaica. There's a chair. I've done many chair pieces, all right?
Yeah.
So there's a chair in this piece, as you can see, and then you have all these various stones and rocks, cobblestone. They're just sitting on the chair, right?
Yeah.
So anyone can go and just take it, but don't take it, right? You're not supposed to take it, right? But where does that come from? It comes from going to a Jewish cemetery for the first time in 1997 when Lucy's grandmother passed, right? I'd never been to a Jewish cemetery before. And, you know, rather than leaving flowers as you would, or as one would in a Christian cemetery, you know, one would leave stones, right, on the grave, right? I saw that, and I thought that was, you know, that made an impact on me, basically is what I'm saying. And things that make an impact on me, you know, I kind of store it for future use in a piece. Yeah. So, you know, I guess I can say, or one can say that, you know, a lot of my works are made up of various cultural aspects from different sources, right? Yeah. If you can see, there's like a little silver, bunch of silver metal that's not quite at the top. I don't know if you can see it in this slide, but it's all bound together, right? And it's hanging above the chair, right? That's very Baroque. It comes from Michelangelo's Pietà, believe it or not, right? Where you have the Virgin, right, with her pure face. She's the Virgin Mary, so she has to have a pure face. But if you look below that beautiful face, right, you have all the drapery, right, all the knotting and the gnarly, the Baroque drapery, because it's talking about what the world has done to her son, the Savior, right? And the Savior is actually stretched over her lap, right? So it refers to that. It's also light reflective, right? A number of my works, they have bottles in them, or they might have a mirror. And I'm working with the fable where there's light, evil shall not pass. So again, there's multiple meanings with regard to various objects that I use. And it's not necessarily random, right? I use it for, or use them for specific purposes.
Well, if that's the case, and then how specific, since you already talked about the very first work, Lucy Frackin meet on the Lapa, or Gregor, can you share with us what specifically or unspecifically, direct or indirect, how each work get its title?
Yeah.
It means, as you explain it now, but what can you further than that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the best way to answer that, Phong, is that each work is a work in and of itself, right? It refers to specific things, you know, like that. You know, the first part of the title comes from, you know, the dealer wanted me to give him a title, and I gave him a title. But as I worked on the piece, it started becoming something else. So I already gave him that portion. So I wanted to stick with that portion of the title that I gave to the dealer, because those are important people in my life, right? So a lot of my work, you know, all my work refers to me, right? You know, it's like every work is a self-portrait, you know, so the statement goes, right? And in a sense, I guess I can argue that, right? Because, you know, you are what you eat, basically is what I'm trying to say. And oftentimes, you know, I'm a teacher, you know, I'm a teacher. And sometimes I have to research for a specific class, right? I don't think we have this piece. It's called Stupa, right? It was in my group show, at the last group show, the only group show that I was at Martos, right?
Yeah.
And that piece comes from me researching Angkor Wat in particular, right? And in researching Angkor Wat, you know, that's in Cambodia, for a specific class, I came upon these structures called stupas, these Asian shrines, right? So, and I never necessarily thought about that before. It's not necessarily about me seeing it, you know, glossing over it. It's about me seeing it and then it registering, right? Once it registers, then it means something. It means I have to articulate it. I have to create an idea based on that registering of the subject that I'm looking at, right? So it prompted me to create a stupa, right? Based on my reading, my research, and visually seeing it. not visually seeing it in person. I haven't seen it in person yet, but seeing it in reproduction, right? So titles refer to pieces in and of themselves, right? Yeah. So there is always a, it might sound corny, there's always a reason for why I give a piece a title. It's, a lot of times it's not just random. I guess I could say it's not just random. It means something specific, and it gives a little insight into the work of art itself, right? Like for this piece that's still up, Spinning Knife, it's called Spinning Knife, Jack Mandora Mina Choose None, right?
Yeah.
And Jack Mandora Mina Choose None comes from Jamaica, right? In the country, the old folks will tell a story, and they will start at Jack Mandora Mina Choose None, tell the story, this winding story, whatever they tell, and at the end they say the same phrase, Jack Mandora Mina Choose None, right? So that's not random, right? And the nun, N-U-N, it's not the religious nun, it's just me spelling it phonetically, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true, because I remember, okay, if we go to, let's say, number 9, Kyle, I like to look at this piece because Arthur was talking about the certain pieces have that. I think that maybe, I think the one on the, maybe is it number 10? Which one is?
Oh, this is If I Could Fly, I'd Be a Boat. Let me see. That's number 9. That's number 9.
Yeah, the one,
number 9.
Is it number 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, that piece. Okay. No, go back. That piece. So that piece was included in the Come Together Sandy show.
Oh, okay.
2013.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Yeah, and it was very dangerous. I remember war, and there was, worry of whether people come close and if the sculpture would fall on them. No, I remember we have to have a guard standing nearby and not allowing people coming too close. But I remember clearly between that piece, which was installed right adjacent from Ursula von Weidenswas's big piece. I think it's called Ocean Voices.
Yeah.
And, she's also an immigrant.
Right.
Coming from Poland, surviving from the camp, her parents, her family. And it was very incredible relationship to have those two pieces in a long space, big space on the 3rd floor. And it was, it was healing in a way, because this piece is not all about the knife sticking out on the round edges, but it's really some form of rituals being performed here.
Yes.
Which I want to bring that up a little bit, Arthur. I mean, did you grow up with that at all, that tradition?
No, not really. I mean, we never really went to church. My mom did, when she came to this country in the maybe late 80s or late 80s briefly. But, we're a spiritual people, believe in the social consciousness. But no, I mean, this is something that I just gravitate to, I have my rituals, right? I get up in the morning, I do my exercise, do my yoga, then, eat my breakfast, and I do my school stuff. And then if I don't have to teach, I go to the studio and I work in the studio. So, that's my ritual. We all have our rituals, but with me, it manifests into my work. And, I guess, like I said before, you're what you eat. A lot of the work that I gravitate to, I mean, it deals with ritual. I think about, again, the Bound Square. It's very ritualistic, right? Yeah. But then, I don't know, I also love, Renaissance painting. I guess one can argue there's ritual to that too, right? So it's everywhere, right? And it's part of who I am. And the title for this piece is to explain, expound, and exhort, to see, foresee, and prophecy to the few who could or would listen, right? So that's a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, the African-American intellectual. That's him making a statement to try to uplift people, right? So this work comes out of that statement. but it's also, you know, based on African throwing knives that I encountered as an art handler.
Yeah.
I worked for the Brooklyn Museum, and the museum was moving their storage space from the basement to the new space. And that's where I encountered these beautiful objects with that sense of danger, right? Because what does a knife do? I mean, it maims people, right? So it comes from that. It comes from Ethiopian crosses, right? Processional crosses, you know, floats in the Caribbean. So again, it has multiple meanings. But
Yeah.
this piece will cut you, right? And if you look at it, it looks like it's falling, right? It's not going to fall if somebody pushes it. It's not going to fall. So I like to say it has contrapposto. It has counterpoise, right?
Yeah.
Again, you go back to multiple meaning, you know. So
Yeah.
it looks like it's going to fall, but it's not going to fall. But those are rusty knives, and they will cut you. So there's that aspect of danger, right?
Yeah.
This knife, one of the knives did cut me because I was trying to step over it, and it grazed me. So there's that aspect to it. But again, if you think of art, you think of contemporary art, you think of Richard Serra, right?
Yeah.
You think about those big Corton steel sculptures that to this day, I'm afraid to walk close to them, right? Again, in the collection of MoMA, there's that one piece, this big steel plate that's on the ceiling, right?
Yes.
I don't know how that is held up there, but I never walk under that thing, right? So there's that aspect of danger, right? With regard to his art. And sometimes it comes out with regard to my art too, like this piece, like the spinning knife, and then other pieces that, you know, like I see Manchester that has that contrapposto that it looks like it's gonna fall over, but it won't fall over unless you try to push it, right? Then you're on your own. Yeah, so it is there, Phong. It's definitely there.
Yeah. Can we go right to, let's say, number 12? I think it's number 12, Carl. Cross Black Jesus entering. Yeah, this piece.
Yeah.
Occasionally, a certain religious connotation or suggestion is made. And that's what I meant to ask you earlier, you know, whether there's ritualistic, the spiritual, or aspects of other related to the, I would say, you know, metaphysical, even if you want to go there. But what you don't practice it. No. Occasionally you reference it. So what does it mean to allow yourself to go there?
Yeah, I guess I can honestly say that the act of doing the art is my religion. Yeah. Right. You know, it might sound corny, it's a cliche, but I think that's in fact what it is, you know, because even when I'm not physically working on art, you know, I think about it, right? You know, maybe I think about Caravaggio, maybe I think about Jean-Michel, or, you know, what have you, right? So, you know, it's a part of who I am at this point, and it's probably been a part of me for a long time. You know, this piece is definitely a cross. That's a very loaded symbol, right? So I'm working with this loaded symbol, and sometimes I feel kind of tentative with regard to showing some of the work because they have such loaded symbols, right? You know, how are people going to react to it? What are they going to say to me? What are they going to say about me? But, you know, being the artist, you know, and, you know, creating this, you know, part of the process is putting it out in public, you know, to see what happens or what it becomes, what people say. So it's just a part of being an artist to me at this point, you know, put it out there and see what people have to say. You know, sometimes people might say something that I don't necessarily see, right? Even a piece like this that I probably created, when did I create that piece? Maybe in the late 1990s, right? Yeah. And again, this piece is electrified. There's a fan. The fan is that black square that spins. It spins really fast. It spins so fast you can't see it spinning, but you can hear it. Just like with the spinning knife. You see it spinning, but you can also hear it. So the sound becomes a part of it. And at one point you made reference to music, Phong, and you know, I'm Jamaican, you know, like I said before, and music is everywhere in Jamaica, right? So that's a part of my culture, it's a part of who I am. And in fact, I have an uncle, Scully Sims, Noel Bartholomew Sims, is one of the biggest percussionists in the history of the island of Jamaica, right? Is one of my father's younger brothers.
Yeah, you told me about him.
Yeah. My dad had 19 siblings. And Scully, I mean, he's been on some of the most seminal albums in music, in in the history of the island. My
Yeah.
parents actually knew Bob Marley. My oldest sister knew Bob Marley because they lived in the same neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a vital part. And whenever I'm in the studio, especially if Lucy's not there and I'm by myself, I crank that music up, man. I like to play music because sometimes, it helps me, right? And it informs me too, right? And
Yeah.
the beat, right? The various beats too, they go into the makeup of my work, right? It's about, it's about movement, right? That's also about movement, right? So
Yeah.
it's a vital part of who I am, right? That cultural aspect of music, so.
Absolutely. I still listen to it when I make the portrait in the end of the month.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
amazing with those portraits, Fong. It's just, I mean, you do so many. I don't know where you get the time, man.
Well, I make the time, buddy.
Yeah, I
So,
hear you.
Arthur,
Yeah.
could you like go forward with several more? Could we have at least 10 or 15 more to go? I let you walk us through,
Okay.
and then come back with a few more questions at the tail end. Go ahead. If
Okay.
you want to move
So
forward.
you can put number 23 up for
Yeah.
Grace One Halo. Yeah, this is a pandemic piece, and this is one that I consider a sculpture and a drawing.
Yeah.
Right? It's on the floor. This one is in the vitrine because the photograph is just, everything is just placed on the surface, right?
Yeah.
So the photograph, if it gets wet, that's the photograph. So it's in a vitrine, and it's about scale. It's about looking down, right? So it's about the ritual act of just looking down upon something. You look down on a grave, right?
Right.
When you go to a cemetery. And this is a homage to my sister, Grace, who passed away during the pandemic, right? Last year. I mean, it was a tough year, right? It's still very tough, right? It's still raging, the pandemic. But, it's personal when it's, somebody who you know or a family member. And Grace and her husband, Douglas, had moved to Seattle in the late 70s because he was in the Army. Then he was stationed there. And then when he got a job as an inspector with Boeing, right? So they were there, and my whole family moved out to Seattle because of them. But then when they retired, they moved to Florida, right? But before she retired, she contracted cancer, right? Ovarian cancer, and she was getting her treatments in Seattle. But during the pandemic, she moved just before the pandemic. When she moved down to Florida, she didn't get the same kind of care, right?
Oh.
So she couldn't go to her treatment. So it was her death is a collateral of the pandemic, right? Because of where she moved to.
Yeah.
So she passed away in May of last year. And then her husband, right? Douglas Palmer, who I'd known since I was 10 years old, he passed away that same year in November, right?
Oh,
So they were both gone. Yeah. I mean, he was like a big brother to me. And he gave himself the middle name Awesome, literally Awesome. Douglas Awesome Palmer, and he was an awesome guy, right? He's an incredible guy. But it's even more tragic because when Grace found out that she had cancer, she has two sons. Her second son, not the oldest, the second one, he committed suicide. So before they left Seattle, so only one person is left from that immediate family, which is the oldest son, David, and it's very sad, right? So this is a homage not only to my sister, but to her husband and to their son, my nephew, right? It has the graphite drawing, right?
Yeah.
So all the screws are part of the piece, right? It holds the piece together. This comes about a lot in my work, where you see staples, you see screws, you see the wire, the rope. They hold the piece together and they act as skin, but they're part of the decoration too.
Yeah.
Various stones, rocks, there's glass. The photograph is sitting on this piece of metal. And then you have my hair on the wax.
Right.
That references guys like Robert Gober, right? Who was a great artist who I encountered when I worked with Paula Cooper, right? Paula Cooper, I kind of the work of Gober, of, I'm drawing a blank on his name. So many great artists that, actually, Jackie Winger. I met Jackie Winger when I worked at Paula Cooper too. Alan Shields. I met Alan Shields, if you know who he is, right? Who passed away, right? He passed away. But he started, when he'd bring his works in, right? and I either put them up or take them to the back. On his drawings and on his prints, he used to sew, right?
Yeah.
So it's really the first encounter with a contemporary artist that I saw this man sewing on his work. And it reminded me of what my mom used to do, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the sewing that I do of my works, let me see which one you can go to. Go to 32, go to 32, number 32.
The drawings, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a drawing, right?
Yeah.
So you can see it's all sewing, right? And this is based on Aboriginal X-ray paintings too, where you can actually see into the structure of the individuals, right?
Yeah.
You can actually see through this work, right? Because that's mylar or acetate, right? So
Yeah.
if this work was on a brown wall, then it would take on the color of the wall, right? So it's various acetate sewn together, and the sewing is the structure also, but it's also decoration, right? And it's very scroll-like too, like Asian scrolls. I remember when Lucy and I went to Japan for the first and only time in November of 2016, in Tokyo, in the National Museum, I saw the work of this artist, calligraphy artist, Kobayashi Tone. Never heard of him before. I mean, his work was basically, they were all in vitrines. It wasn't framed. You'd have a rectangle, you'd have a square or a rectangle within the boundaries of that rectangle. You'd have his calligraphy and then his stamp, and that was it.
Yeah.
I thought it was so profound, right? Very minimal, less is more. And that, the structure of that, in addition to, you know, the Aboriginal bark paintings, Asian scroll, went on to influence all these pandemic works that are basically in the show on the wall, right? And the image is basically of the World Heritage Site that I visited in Japan, right? And it was just fabulous. This big minimal structure or minimal structures that just sit there, right? Made of dirt and sand. I mean, it's amazing. And it has my hair on the top in the square, and it has my hair on the bottom along with Lucy's hair, the combining of various kinds of hair. And it has to be my hair because I remember in the 1980s, it was when I first started using hair. I went to Astor Place, you know, that barbershop to get a bunch of hair. The guys thought I was crazy. I got it, but it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me in the 1980s. And then, you know, in a more contemporary vein, what's his name? Oh, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Oh God, he sold those snowballs on Astor Place.
Snowball on
the snowballs in Astor Place.
Okay. I mean, our great artists.
Yeah, African American. Yeah.
I mean, David Hammond.
David Hammond's, yeah, in a more contemporary vein, right? You know, but I started using my hair again.
Yeah.
When I lived in Rome, right, at American Academy, I was doing these drawings, these Black Caravaggio drawings with postcards of Caravaggio, reminiscent of those Bryce Martin postcard pieces. You know, right, the graphite ones. They had a lot of graphite on these various pieces. And I needed a reference for me, the Jamaican, you know, the African, to go along with the great Baroque artists, Caravaggio. So that's when I started using my hair in all these various drawings. And it's only in drawings that I use the hair, actually.
Right. So, let's see some more drawing.
Okay. Blue Days in Winter, 35. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So these are all these images I take with my phone, right? And then I upload it to my computer and I print it out. And it's interesting with this piece because the image is on the left, right, of the walk that we'd go for walks during the pandemic. The ink is actually it's losing its quality, right? So that's why it kind of looks kind of off, right? But I like that. It's almost like a found object, right? Yeah, it's almost like a mistake, right? And the thing about mistakes, either you use it or you don't use it, right? It's always you making the decision. So I like that offness of it, right? Yeah. And then then I printed out the various asphalts, right, or the sand, right, different colors, right? And again, it has my hair. It has the see-through, right, the see-through of the acetate. Yeah. Right. So that's one. Go to 34. Weeping Man Tonight. All right, Weeping Man Tonight. right? So if you think of art history, think of Weeping Women by Pablo Picasso.
Yeah.
So this is a take off of the Weeping Women series. This is my Weeping Man series, right?
Yeah.
Not Weeping Man, it's not a series, but this is my Weeping Man drawing, right?
Can we see closer, Kyle, to see the scribbling marks on that letter E that's close in? I just trying to see whether we can or not.
Sorry, I'm trying. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Those are
I can on this. I'm sorry.
drawing author.
I mean, they're scribbles. They're reminiscent of, again, of Cy Twombly.
Got it.
Gestural marks, Mark Tobey, Franz Klein. De Kooning had a calligraphy part of his production in the late 1950s, I believe. And the centerpiece on the bottom, it's tape that I sewed on the surface of glassine, right? So I mean, again, it's about recycling, not throwing something out, right? Using that for an effect, right? So the tape and the stitching kind of offset by the ink and the pen, and the Weeping Man. And the thing about that, I gave a talk at the show, several talks last week, and someone went up close to, the writing that I do, and they said, "Man, that's really obsessive, right?"
Yeah.
So that's obsessive too. Or those graphite pieces, the Black Caravaggio pieces, where I work the graphite into the surface of the paper. Yeah. So there is that obsessiveness with these pieces, but it's not as obvious as with the rat piece. And the Weeping Man tonight refers to me, right? It refers to me. Again, it comes back to me, who I am, because it was a tough year, man, that pandemic. And like I said, we're still going through it, right? So, I mean, sometimes I would just start crying in my studio as I'm working, right? Yeah. Just thinking about things that are happening. I mean, I'm a sensitive guy, and sometimes I just have to get it out, right? Through the act of that or the act of doing. So again, I'm articulating, a state of mind. Yeah. Right. So that's the ritual of, of creating, the gesture of that specific moment, right? Yeah. So I probably do maybe 4 times as many drawings as sculpture, like a lot of painters, like a lot of sculptors. I began as a painter, and I still have those painterly qualities that show out in sculpture, but they definitely show out in drawings, right? So the drawings are, they manifest a little faster than the sculpture. Yeah. So they're gestures in and of a particular moment, just like the sculptures are, but the drawings are more of the moment than the sculpture, because the sculpture you work on over a period of time. With regard to a drawing, you could do one in a day or 2 days, you know what I'm saying, so on and so forth. So yeah. Yeah,
let me ask you one thing. As the recent work, for example, let's see, we can put Dreamcatcher number 29, Carl. Let's go back to the sculpture. This piece was included in the Brooklyn show years ago. That I don't remember the title of the show. Maybe it's something about Caribbean vision of tropical paradise. The show that our friend Tumelo Mosaka did.
Oh, this wasn't the one that was there. That Dreamcatcher.
You made several of them.
Oh yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah,
that one, if you go to my website on the large sculptures, you'll see that Dreamcatcher. But I've made 6. This is the last one that I made, right? Mm-hmm. And I started making the Dreamcatchers like 1999 to 2000, that first one that you're talking of. And basically, someone had brought back a Dreamcatcher for me from Canada, right? And up to that point, I'd seen those objects before, but I never really thought about it, right? It edged in my mind, like I said, then I have to do something about it. So in these 6 pieces, that's me articulating the idea of a Dreamcatcher, what a Dreamcatcher is. Yeah. That first one, it extends out 15 feet, right? Yeah, there are stones and rocks that just sit on the chair. There's a chair in there. There's something that hangs down that floats, right? And it has that first one, it has a tin foil, referring to James Hampton, the outsider artist who created this throne to Jesus Christ. You know, and it's about, you know, trying to catch a star, that first one. With this one, I mean, it's airy, it's light, it's that armature wire that ceramicists use, right, on the as the underbelly, right? So it's very malleable, right? You can probably bend it, but don't bend it, don't bend it, right? And you know, I'm trying to articulate a dream catcher with the least amount of materials as possible. So there's basically just 3 materials to create this piece. You have the feathers, the airiness of the feathers, the ritual aspect of the feathers, right? You have the copper wire, and you have the armature wire, and then that's it, right? Yeah, and it just hangs on the wall, right? So that's me articulating, you know, the idea of what a dream catcher is to me, basically.
Yeah, with dream, the whole notion of lightness and density, because early work is so dense, you know.
Yes.
It's to find everything possible accessibly. I mean, I know that you have a reference and your own, I would say, deployment of minimalist repetition. You know, so does minimalism appeal to your sensitivity, either formally or emotionally, or both?
Oh, it's both. It does, man. It's all valid. That's what I like to say to my students. Everything is valid. I mean, again, I go back to Bound Square. It's post-minimalist. It's considered post-minimalist, but it's still a square. And if you look at a lot of my work, it does reference that square, you know, and then I take off of it, you know. So it's to me, it's all valid. I mean, Donald Judd, man, Donald Judd is great, you know, and I actually got to meet him at Paul Cooper again when he showed up Paul Cooper. So it's all valid. It's all valid. It's there for an artist to use, right? There's a whole universe, right?
Yeah.
Of knowledge. Yeah.
Let's go see some more, Arthur.
Okay. And I say, brother had a very good day, number 36. One halo. That's where the show gets its title from. I mean, there's that halo. It's the piece of wood that's above all that with the copper wire. You know, those 3 pieces on top are from the Hyde Museum. This great little museum up in upstate. You have the Degas, you have the Rembrandt, and you have that supposed Da Vinci. It's probably a fake. You know, there's dubious thought with regard to that, right? And then in this piece, you have the tin foil, where you can sort of see a reflection, right? You know, again, you know, reflected light, James Hampton, medieval art, gold leaf painting. And there's a photograph of my sister Grace that passed away.
In the middle?
And, yeah, in the middle. And the son that's wearing the blue, he's the one that committed suicide. And the one that's wearing the white shirt is David. That's the one that's left. Very sensitive young man, you know, my nephew. On the right, there's a portrait of a photograph of a drawing that I did. The fat from the pig cooks the pig. Yeah. And then it has my, you know, abstract expressionism, you know, explosion of pen, and there, you know, 2 kinds of ink that I used to do as a kid in school, right? So I'm still doing the same thing, right? And the stitching as decoration, stitching as holding the piece together. And this piece, I mean, it's a bittersweet piece for me, you know. And this piece is reminiscent of, let me get the correct titles. Paul Clay's A Balanced Capriccio. That's again in collection of MoMA. And a song by Ice Cube, believe it or not, It Was a Good Day, right? I remember, I remember thinking about this as thinking about that as I was working on this piece. And also John Cassavetes' improvisational daily happenings in his movie, right? It's a day in the life of. Yeah. So this is a day in the life of Arthur Sims, right? Yeah. Even though 2 of the 3 part of my family in this photograph, they're dead, including the husband, right? But on this particular day, in this photograph, me going to see those things in the museum, it was a very good day, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm just, again, I'm articulating me in daily life during the pandemic, right? All this suffering, you know, my family dying, but for this one day, it was a good day. So basically that's what I'm saying, right? With regard to this piece. And this piece, the title for the show comes from this piece itself. So it's multiple meanings again. And again, it's very scroll-like, right? Very Asian scroll-like. And you have the reference of the wood, the Aboriginal reference of you know, those bark paintings that hang from pieces of wood, right? From the eucalyptus tree, basically.
Yeah.
So it references history also.
Right. Let's see two more before we go to the installation views.
Okay. Blanket. Go to blanket. That's number 31. Right. Yeah, this is a different use of the feathers, right? This is the only, well, it's not the only piece actually that I've used feathers like this. I've used it in a number of pieces. But again, this piece illustrates, you see the use of the staples, right? That actually hold, you know, I built the whole structure myself, right? The structure of the that's holding the whole piece together. And then the staples act as decoration. They hold the whole piece together. You have the graphite, the drawing, you know, reiterating the rectangle. And you have the cloth that was either given to me by Lucy's grandmother or her mother, I can't quite remember. And then you have the feathers, right? And various feathers that is reminiscent of all those feather pieces from the Americans and from, you know, other cultures that I've seen, right? I think this one piece references seeing a show at the Brooklyn Museum with all these beautiful feathers, you know, me trying to, you know, I guess what comes to mind is this clothing, this piece of I can never get to that, right? I'm trying to emulate it, but yeah, I can't quite get there because either I don't have the skill or the cultural background to do it. But you know, I did something. You know, one has to do something, right? It's about color and tone, you know, all of the various things that artists do with regard to creating a work of art. Right?
Yeah, but it's you know, it's a question of lightness. Like if we go back to the piece, Cow is called "If I Could Fly, I Would Be a Boat." That's number 9. Can we go back and earlier piece?
Yeah.
So it's not. It doesn't have feather. It doesn't have all that lightness and ephemeralness. But still, this one imply a transitory state.
Yes, it does.
It's moving. It have all the things in it as if you are moving one space to the next one.
Yeah.
So
and it has a mirror in it too. It has a mirror in it too. If you're standing up close, you could see the mirror. This piece has only been in 2 shows. The first show that it was in was at the Neuberger Museum in 1994. This piece and the piece "And He Passes" were both in that exhibition, right? And I mean, you know, if you're able to see this piece, I don't know if you went to that opening, Phong, at the Neuberger '94, but it didn't quite look like this. The top part looked different, right? Because oftentimes, you know, if I have a piece, I still work on it because, you know, because I feel like working on it. And this is one such piece where it was finished in 93, 94. But, you know, being in my studio and being who I am, let me just try this. Let me just try that, you know, so yeah. Yeah. And it's about implied movement. And you can see that it's on those 5 blocks that picks it up off the floor, right? To give it a more airiness so it can, you know, so air can flow below it. And all that, the wood at the bottom, the structure of this was taken from when I had a space on Broadway in the mid 1990s. When I first moved in, there was a vestibule there that I had to tear down. I tore it down because it would took up so much space, and I reused that wood to create this piece basically. So so again, it's recycled elements, right, from my world. And it has crates from MoMA. The MoMA blue, the blue part on the right and the blue part on that those are crates from MoMA, because after something comes back, they throw out all these crates because they don't have enough space to store them. And sometimes I would just take them, right, and just use them in artwork, right, recycling those crates.
Well, as we now see in the back there on the right, in the back there, Kyle, the which brings to police line brother looks. That's 28. So it's one of the, I guess, political piece, a commentary of this past year we've been through.
Yeah. I mean,
there is a little bit with, especially the top author.
Yeah.
Again, I meant to ask you this a while ago. The bottles. I know that different, object means something differently, and it also depends how do you include them in what context, which pieces and whatnot. But in this instant, it's a political piece, obviously. It's very explicit. And then here on top, you include those various bottles. So tell us a little bit more about the genesis of the piece.
Yeah, well, this barricade was outside my studio for like several months. And this was, maybe last year, I can't remember the exact timing, but it was during the pandemic. And because there were a lot of marches, on Staten Island, and it just stayed there. Staten Island is like the forgotten borough. I mean, it's a very funky place. It's like, Manhattan or Brooklyn in the 70s or 80s, right? And Jose Martos, the owner of Martos Gallery, came for a visit with Bob Nikas. They came, to look at my work. And as they were leaving, Jose saw this outside. He looked at it, said, "Arthur, maybe you should do something with that." But the thing is, I'd been thinking about doing something with that for a long time. But because it's right outside my door, and I know there are cameras on buildings around there, I said, maybe I shouldn't do that, because then I'd be on camera. But when Jose said that, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this in. So I took it in, right? And it's such a loaded thing, right? Police line, do not cross, right? It's very loaded, especially after George Floyd and, all that stuff. So, it already says something, just that alone. Yeah. But it needed something else. You can't, me being who I am, I couldn't just put that, like police line, do not cross. That's not enough for me, right? So I had to bring it closer to me, right? I had to bring it closer to Brother Looks. And Brother Looks is about me, looking at what's going on around me, right? And the bottles, light reflective, evil, right? But you can break the bottles, right? And then it becomes a weapon, right? Has particular color, but there are also feathers up there too, right? So it's fragile. It's really fragile, right? So it's about all that's going on. It's about the fragility of the structure, like what you were talking about before, Phong, the history of the structure of us, right? We're very fragile, especially during this time when you have the left and the right, and they're fighting amongst each other, right? To see who's going to stand on top. And really, we have to stand together. That's how it works. Again, if you study history, you see that, right? If you stand apart, then it's going to crumble, right? So it's just about the fragility of us, through my eyes, basically.
Super true, Arthur. Can we now maybe, Kyle, go through the installation shots, because there's several of them. The whole idea of doing this presentation and have conversation with Arthur is to inspire people to come to see the show, really. So this is when you enter into the bigger space where the left and right install these incredible new drawings, which we hope to ask a few more questions in a minute. And then you go to the back, to the next shot, you will see various works installed different angle, almost like a symphony, so to speak. I like the way that it speaks to each other, its piece, and it throws out the kind of compiling a little history of author here, a little survey, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
And somehow they all sing in unison.
Mm-hmm.
Can see a few more from this perspective, different angle, perhaps, Carl.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Look at those pieces on the floor.
Yeah.
In relation to the bigger pieces in the back, as you see there. If I could fly, I would be a boat right in front of you.
Yeah. And the skate pieces refer to the position of the feet of the kouros. The piece called Boy references Greek kouros, right? And one of the installation shots, you had the bicycle piece, and that was inspired by Woman and Bicycle by Willem de Kooning. That's in the collection of the Whitney Museum.
Yes,
right?
for Roach's painting, indeed.
Yeah, yeah. That haunted me for a long time. That painting until I was able to cleanse it with this
well, that whole series, Arthur, would never occur. It wasn't for Maya Shapiro, whom I think de Kooning ran in the street after working on the first one, Woman One, which is at MoMA.
Yeah.
1953, the first one, which he worked more than 2 years, and he was about to, I think the painting was roll over on the hallway, about to be thrown out.
Yes.
So when he told Shapiro that he would be doing super soon, and Shapiro said to him, let me have a look before you throw it out. Would have been okay with you? They came back in the typical Shapiro way. He looked at it for a good 10 or 15 minutes without saying anything. And then finally, he said, this is the best painting you have tried to bring together abstraction and your own for figurative elements, particularly your love for Ang, and neoclassicism. And
I love Ang too, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to very hard to understand him better. But the point is, yes, it's super true about you being once told, I think it might have been our old friend Ezra Cohn, who might say, I think he said that something to the fact that you are a cultural hoarder.
He probably did say that. Yeah, hey, why not, right? It's there for a reason, or to be used for something. Yeah.
Every you move, you accumulate. I think that's the. Do we have a few more of those shots, Kyle?
There were only 3 of the install shots.
That's it? Okay. All right. So what we can do now is I was going to offer Kyle's hair. He had more hair to your use, but it doesn't fit. I have none. So there's no way I can add any of mine to your usage, Arthur. Yeah. So why don't we, it's good. We've been talking about an hour and 15 or 20 minutes now. Why don't we open up to the Q&A so our friend can ask you question, Arthur.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Phong. This has been a really great conversation. And if any of you in the audience have any questions at this time, please drop them in the chat. I can call on you. But first, we're going to start off with my comrade, Anya.
Hi.
Anya.
Thanks, Cal. Thank you, Phong and Arthur, for this wonderful conversation. My question is about your studio and materials. I'm wondering if you have an organized repository of materials and where you source them. And if you start out with all your materials at hand when you're making a piece, or is the piece kind of informed by the materials that you collect as you build the piece? Yeah, well, if you were to come to the studio, you say, oh, look at all that junk over there, but it's organized. I know where everything is, so it's my particular type of organization. I know it depends on what I'm making in terms of what I use, right? It could be a particular color, a particular shape with regard to using a piece. So it's, it's kind of hard to answer that question in that regard, But the most important thing is that I always make something, because it's something that I've been doing my entire life, right? So there is organization there, even though to the layperson who don't know me, or to people who know me, it might look random in terms of where everything is. But
I know where all the items are in my space. And people do send me things. People give me things because they say, oh, Arthur might use this in a work, or he might like this. I've even gotten things in the mail from people, right? Because they know I could use a particular object. And don't all start sending me stuff in the mail though, you know. But what I like to say is, like, if you're a painter, right, you go to, I guess Pro Paint's not around, but Pro Paint, right? And you would buy blue paint, yellow paint, red paint, right? You don't specifically have something in mind, but you want to buy that paint. So with me, it's objects, right? I have particular objects that I see that I like. Oh, I like that color. I like that rust. I like that newness, right? So you get it, or people give it to you, and you put it in your studio for use of when you are creating something, right? So that would be my best answer to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Next, we're going to go over to G.E. Schwartz. Asking to unmute you now.
Thank you, Cal, and thank you, Phong and Arthur. Question is, I think we're given, when I look at your work, I feel as though we're given the gift in your work of not being presented with like a eureka moment or some abracadabra moment or something like that. Is the object of what you're trying to do in any way to create an enigma to allow us, to guide us into entering into an activating ambivalence?
I don't know about that. You talk about audience. What is an audience? And there are multiple audiences, right? You know, there's an audience of one, the audience of friends and family, the audience of art history, cultural history, world history. So we're always working to an audience, right? But when push comes to shove, it's me working with what I have, right? And, you know, after I finish, then it becomes whatever it becomes. So I'm not necessarily articulating, you know, for you, you know, with regard to that question that you just asked, but there are audiences. I mean, it's really, again, it's a tough question to answer. But again, you know, like I said, you know, I answer the question by all the works that have manifested over these 40 plus years, right? You know, when I go to my studio, you know, I'm going to work on something and an object is going to manifest because that's my ritual, right? I've been doing it my whole life. And I can honestly say my whole life, because like I said earlier, when I was a kid in Jamaica, you know, 6, 5, 7 years old, I was making things back then, but I was just picking up on this cultural aspect. I didn't call myself an artist because I probably didn't know what art was, right? I'm just creating, right? And you know, I guess it's innate in us as human beings, the act to create. You know, it's been said that, you know, before we had language, we used to draw on walls, right? Cave walls. So it's something that's innate, and it's something that I've cultivated over the years, right? It's very religious for me, right? So, you know, I'm definitely going to create, and, you know, it is about me and the various audiences, but that's as specific as I can get with regard to your question.
And
Well,
it's
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up what you said there, EG, I think it might have been one of the great things that I read on Arthur's work by Robert Storr. He wrote on Arthur, essentially explored two different things. You know, one is how the found object, the images become ordered together, the nouns, the verbs, the adjective with which Arthur creates sentences, paragraphs, chapter of his so-called young fiction. I think that's a very good way to describe.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
you know, if you think in the fictional, you know, in literary setting, then it's young fiction.
It's young
the
fiction.
other thing is the subject of scale, I think, which is very important to how the image appears, you know, it relates to human body. Very important that why his work is so distinctly different from many artists of his peer group. For example, our common friend, Neri Ward, who also was there at the graduate school class with you in Brooklyn College, Arthur. I mean, whose work is more ambitious in scale and have much more political overtone. That's one thing to describe Neri's work, you know, away from your own work, is really scale, and it's a very big deal.
Yeah, well, de Kooning said that if his brush can't touch the outer boundaries of the canvas, then he's not going to do that, right?
Right.
So scale is very important to me. The biggest thing in the show is, if I could fly, I'd be a boat. That goes like 15 feet.
Yeah.
But the height isn't that really tall. I could touch the top of it.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about scale, vertical as opposed to horizontal, right?
Yeah.
So the works in the show is a dance of the various scales that I've worked on over the years, right? With the smallest piece standing next to the Dr. Du Bois quote piece, right?
Yeah.
But that small piece is actually very heavy, even though it is small, right? So, it's about looking down as opposed to looking up, as opposed to landscape.
Yeah.
Right? So scale is important.
And it's also scale, G, that reference to the handmade. So it's all tied together when the Kooning is sharing the ideal sense of the scale of the painting. Let's say with a Woman One series leading to the late great 60s, which I also love, and Door to the River, those painting is really the extent of his arms spreading out. That's the scale that he really referencing to. So it's handmade. Author doesn't have an assistant. Maybe yet.
Yeah, I'm getting old though.
He will. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question, Phong. It's like, because it's important for me to touch the work because it's, it's a part of me. Yeah. But, I am getting old and it is physical labor that I'm doing. Yes. Right? To make some of those big pieces, like it takes a lot of energy. And I'm like, I'm getting old. So I don't know how long I'm going to be able to make those pieces. But having said that, I also do drawings too. So, I'm always going to be able to do something to work. So, the challenge is as I'm getting older, am I still going to be doing those big bulky things, right? Yeah. And I probably will attempt to do it, but it'll be hard for me to have assistants, right? Because it's so much about me. It's so much about the mark, right? That I make, right? Coming from my hand, coming from my person, right? So if I have an assistant doing that, I mean, it's almost like counterfeit to me, really, Yeah. So you're gonna have to remember I said that. Remember I said that 5 years from now. Right?
It's recorded. You never know. I mean,
that's right.
Look at that to Louise Bourgeois. So let's just hold your horse for a minute.
That's right. That's right.
All right, Kyle. Do we have any more questions?
All right. I have a question for you, Arthur. There's specifically in regards to the sculpture, but I guess in your work as a whole, there's an obvious kind of intensity to the surfaces of the work. There's the tension of the wrapped rope. There's the kind of precariousness of the placement of the objects within the sculptures, and also thus in this installation, the precariousness of the audience kind of dance around the sculptures. But going back to this intensity, I'm thinking specifically about, there's a work that was in the slideshow we didn't get to look at with the skateboard and the fan. And there's all this talk of implied movement that we've had. The implied movement in that one I found is a humorous result. I found it funny.
And put that up and share everybody. I think it's
sure.
He looked like a ska prince. He looked like a ska prince. That's the title of that piece. Number 14.
Yes.
14.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull that up just a moment.
I like the question.
Screen. Yes. So my question, this one, it made me laugh when I saw it in person, the implied movement of the skateboard propelling itself forward. I'm curious about your use of humor if there is a humor
Yes.
you deploy privately, or
There-
it's not
yeah.
immediately recognizable.
There is humor. I mean, during the opening for the show, someone who knows me from over the years, so, Arthur, there's so much humor in here, right? And there is humor in the show, but you'd have to know me sometimes to know what that humor is.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you can see it in this piece. Like I said, the title for this piece is "He Looked Like a Ska Prince," and actually, that's what someone said to me. That's where this piece comes from. It comes from somebody making the statement, right? Bo was his name, right? So I was putting together an exhibition of Jamaica, the country of Jamaica, for the Venice Biennial in 2001, right? So I'd gotten my Guggenheim grant to do that. And so, okay, I got the grant. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do it. I tried to do that 5 years prior. I wasn't able to do it. But this time I was able to do it, right? Thanks to Agnes Gunn and a bunch of other people. But I had to fundraise, right? Me, right? Because I'm the one that came up with the idea. I'm the one that's putting it together. And Lucy helped me a little later on. My wife, Lucy Fradka, great painter, by the way. So I was working at MoMA, right? After the workday was over, I would dress, right? And I had an interview at MTV, right? Because I'd sent them a letter. I sent letters to everybody asking for funding, right? And nobody responded except for Agnes Gunn, right? And as soon as she responded, then it's gonna happen, right? So the way I was dressed basically was, Bo said, "You look like a ska prince," right? So that's where the title comes from. And it kind of, it etched something in my mind. I have to do a piece relating to that, right? So I went for the interview and they liked, my proposal, but they weren't gonna give me any money, right? Actually, one of the people that I wrote to was Ben and Jerry's, right? They wrote me back. They wrote me back, say, "Oh, this is great, but we don't do things like that. But here's a coupon for ice cream." They sent me a coupon for ice cream. So this piece is plugged in and the fan turns on, right? And this skate was one of my suppliers, Tom Bevan from Northern Ireland. He was one of my suppliers, an artist from Northern Ireland. And he found this skate and it had all that writing on it, right? And he gave it to me and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it, based on what Bo, said to me. And the fan is about, actual movement. The fan can be turned on. So if you go to the exhibition, there are 3 pieces that you speak to the people at the gallery to say, can we see this turned on? And the thing is, we don't leave them on all the time because they're really old motors, right? And you don't want them to burn out. So we turn them on, see you hear the sound, right? And this piece is weighted down under the wheels because if you turn it on, it'll start moving. If you don't weight it down, because it's about actual movement as opposed to implied movement. Yeah. So.
Terrific. Cool. All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Arthur. And sorry, just a moment. Thank you, Phong. This has been a really terrific conversation. And
is there any more? Is there more questions?
That's it for questions for today.
What? All right.
Yeah.
I just want to point out this, okay? So when Holland Carter wrote that review in that group show that I mentioned earlier in New York Times in August 31st, 2007, I had right in front of me here, and he mentioned Arthur then. This is like 2007, that group show, Caribbean Visions of Tropical Paradise and Protest. And he mentioned that Dreamcatcher by the Jamaican-born New Yorker, Arthur Sims, who should be a lot better known in this city. So here we are, 2021, and Jose Martos recognized with Bob Nickers the brilliant works of Arthur Sims. Never too late to become what you might have been.
That's right. That's right. So definitely
to Martos and the gallery crew over there, and kudos to you for hanging there for so long, Arthur.
Yes. Thank you, Phong.
Making the work.
I'm going to pass the mic quickly over to Jose.
Yeah.
Unmute you if you have
What? That's Jose there?
Hey, Fong, Jose, Arthur, everyone.
Hey, Jose.
Good to
Hey,
see
before
you.
I forgot, Fong, is the small Robert Janis painting you have behind you?
Yes.
I gave him his first show in New York.
I think we got it from that very show when thing was very inexpensive.
Yeah, the lobster.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I want to thank also Marquita Flower. You know, she's the one who really introduced us together. And she has a beautiful daughter now, like Seneca.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed, you know, how things go, you know, the karma, you know, how someone introduce you and then it's a huge collaboration. And I want also to thank Catherine Sibony for the show we have right now, because she put a lot of energy and a lot of trust in the gallery, in Arthur and myself. And when we decided to do that crazy show, we had so much fun. I was much more stressed than Arthur. And Arthur came and said, Jose, I can see you super stressed. We decided to go that way. And then it's the first time then, you know, an artist really calmed me down, you know. It was the opposite. He said, Jose, believe on the show. Don't worry, it's the way we install it. And I'm really grateful to have Arthur and people like you, Fong, and everyone to give a little bit of attention to Arthur. And what I want to say in the work of Arthur, you know, it's very difficult to date a work, and that's for me it's magical. You can look at a piece, you believe it's from the 90s, but it's already in the 2000s. And it's maybe because of the nature of the material and the medium that you're using to make the piece. But also, I see a lot of spirituality in the show, you know. It's a lot about people traveling and like we all immigrants. But, you know, I also believe your mother is very important in the show, because she's the first one who left the country. You know, she lived a paradise to go to hell and become an immigrant and kind of bring back in the day, you know, it was not easy to bring, you know, a lot of she needs a lot of energy, a lot of courage, leaving a family. And I believe, you know, the spirit of your mother and the karma of your mother when you installed the show was very present. And the way the show is being hung as something magical, you know. And I love the way you respect your family and they present in your work. You name a lot of other artists, and I love all of them. And I just want to congratulate you, Arthur. And I don't really have a question because everyone covers so much, you know, today. Then I just want to add, then again, Marquita, your mother, Catherine, a lot of women are involved in this big man show, but you know, I see a lot of femininity and a lot of respect in your show, and I just want to underline that.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Jose.
That's nice. I like you also pronounce author name Athieu. No, it's like the way the French pronounces, you know, Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson, you know. It's just lovely. Thank you so much. Back to you, Kyle.
All right. Well, thank you, Jose. At the Rail, we have a tradition of ending our community events with a poetry reading. Unfortunately, our scheduled poet, Chekwube Dunladi, was having technical issues, so we have so they'll have to join us another day in the near future. However, in the spirit of spontaneity, I am thrilled to welcome our poet laureate of the day, Tyhe Cooper, to the stage. A graduate from Pratt Institute, writer Tyhe Cooper works in experimental prose, poetry, and digital language art. They are a senior production assistant at the Brooklyn Rail. Over to you, Tyhe.
Thank you so much, Arthur and Phong, for today's talk. It was really lovely to see all of the work. I, in the spirit of spontaneity, am not reading my own work today, but am reading an excerpt from a longer poem by Alice Notley that was published in a zine called Mag City 2 in 1977, and it's right here. It's a recent collection from me, so I'm excited about it. And Cal has just posted the PDF for the whole zine in the chat in the spirit of the way that I feel like zines are meant to be shared. This is January by Alice Notley. Mommy, what's this fork doing? What? It's being Donald Duck. What could I eat this? Eat what? This cookie? What do you mean? What could I eat it? Does he bite people? That fish is dead. That fish got dead today. That fish gets dead today, right? These are my silver mittens, Mommy. No, it's gold. They're gold mittens. On myself, I put my black hat and my mittens myself. Edmund, 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 Ma, lodel, lodel, lodel. Daddy, the doctor did put a wart on you, right? I touch the purple petals. She says, hey. The flower says, we are purple together. They touch purple, it keeps purple. Purple means us here. The air moved a person. I like people because they're as serious as I am. Being purple is very serious. It's dense and still. It's a matter of fact, but light seems it. I seem the light makes me feel purple. A petal is crumpling. I've done before. I sleep in the bulb. Being purple is long. Crumpling is not as serious as being purple. I may disagree. I'm not serious, not smiling. I'm smiling as crumpling only a little now. I'm mostly staying seriously purple now. Do you remember when you were like Edmund? Yeah. What did you do? Crawled with him. Do you remember last year? Yeah, Mommy, what did you do when you beat Anselm? The jacket is furniture. I have to fix, Mommy. I have to fix all the tools. I'm in the snow and my feet go in the footprints. I'll look up love in the dictionary. They're beautiful. Bodily, they're incomprehensible. I can't tell if they're me or not. They think I'm their facility. We're all about as comprehensible as the crocuses. In myself, I'm like a color, except not in the sense of a particular one. That's impossible. That's under what I keep trying out, with which I can practically pass for an adult to myself. Some of it is pretty and useful, like when I say to them, now I will take you for a walk in the snow to the store, and prettily and usefully we go. Mommy, the lovely creature. You should have seen how I looked last night. Bob Dylan, Bob Creeley, Bob Rosenthal, Bob on Sesame Street. Oh, I can't think of any other Bobs right now. Garbage. It perks. Thy tiger, thy night are magnificent. It's 10 below zero, deep, deep down, deep in my abdomen. It pulls me up and leads me about the house. It's got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. It does anything in the world of particulars without wanting. The anyone careless love sees that everything goes, minds. The melody was upside down. Now the melody turns over. One note, my feet go. And you guys can read the rest of January in that link that Cal sent. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ty. And thank you, Arthur, and thank you, Phong. We'd also like to thank Jose, Catherine, and Camilla at Martos Gallery for helping make today's program possible. Make sure you go see Arthur's show at Martos Gallery before it closes on January 15th.
And thank you, Marquita Flowers, too. Thank you. It wouldn't have happened without Marquita. Thank you, Marquita Flowers.
Thank you.
Cal.
No, by all means. We encourage everyone to view our archive of these conversations on our YouTube channel, where we'll upload today's conversation shortly. Join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation between Philip Pearlstein and Jason Rosenfeld on the occasion of Pearlstein's show on View Now at Betty Cunningham. We'll conclude with a poetry reading from Zachary Wallard. You can now turn on your microphones and say goodbye as you leave.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Thanks, Phong. Thank you, Ty.
Thank you. Great discussion.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Hey, don't see the show, okay? It's January
15th.
Woo! Yes, indeed. Happy Monday and happy holiday to be coming. And yes, hi, Janet.
Hey, hi.
How are
Glad
you?
to be back. Arthur Sims, didn't I meet you at Fong's party?
You probably did. You
Oh,
probably
yeah.
did.
Impressed that time. Couldn't wait to see you now. And so
Yeah.
glad I did.
That's
Yeah.
Janet Coleman, my friend. Cat.
Yes.
Hey, WBBIA. Yes.
DAI. Hey, listen, you guys. Fong, I'm going to send you an invitation. I have a new time for
Okay.
my show, and I want you to come on it and talk about this amazing program. Arthur can come too. Should
Sure.
come.
Okay.
Before
Yeah?
we get arrested, don't get arrested.
Don't get arrested.
Good to see you, Janet.
Yes, you too. Very glad.
Go see the show, you guys. Much love. And let's get some lunch. I'm hungry.
Thank you again, Arthur.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care
at
and
the-
thank you so
Bye.
much.
You
All
guys-
right.
Thank you,
all.
Brooklyn Rail. Bye.
Thanks.
Stay safe, everyone.
Stay
Bye,
safe.
Jane.
Take care.
Yes.
Bye,
That's Arthur.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye, Jane.
Take care.
Hey, man.